Hey guys, just doing a quick video on a 6.0 Powerstroke crank no start or a hot no start. We've got the scanner hooked up right here showing ICP pressure, the desired pressure, and the IPR regulator percentage. So I've got the key on right now. We've got a 0 PSI on both desired and the actual pressure. 14.84%, which is fully open. I'm going to try to crank this truck over. Customer was explaining that it sometimes doesn't start when cold and never starts when hot. So my assumption is it's not building enough pressure. So let's go ahead and crank this thing over and see what type of pressure we're seeing. We're going to watch this one, watch these 4 items here. And this top one right here needs to hit above 500 psi in order for the injectors to fire. So let's go ahead and fire this thing over. And as you can see, we're only hitting 270 psi. This thing's not going to bust over. So the next thing, I'm going to move out to the engine bay, and I'm going to show you guys the tool that I use and where to hook it up and how to monitor the pressure and find out where a leak is. So I'm gonna pause the video for a moment, transition out there, and then I'll show you guys how I accomplish that. What we have here is a hose that's set up for pressure testing. So I've got a gauge on here, fitting for an air compressor, and then the fitting that goes into the ICP sensor. This is how I use to pump air into the system, and it will push all of the oil out of the system. And then if there's an air leak, you'll find out whether if it's coming from the passenger valve cover, the driver's valve cover, or under the valley cover, which will pinpoint where the leak could be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the ICP sensor, which is right down here on the valve cover, and I'll show a close-up picture of that. And then you want to pull this whole intake tube off. That way you can get down to the PCV so you can test the driver's side valve cover to find out if any air is coming out of there. And to test the passenger side, you're going to just pull the oil cap, and you will know if any air is leaking out of that. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this tube off, pull the ICP sensor, and get my assembly hooked up to the ICP port, and I will show you guys how to pump air in the system and find out where it's leaking. Got the turbo inlet pulled off. That way we have access to this port right here, which is for the PCV system, the crankcase ventilation system. If there's a leak in the driver's side, you'll feel air or hear air coming out of that hole. On this side over here, we've got the oil cap off, which we will see either air, steam, or hear air coming out of that hole. And then we have this test hose hooked up right here to the ICP port. That right there will pump air into the system, into the high pressure system. With air compressor, I've got it set at 120 psi. I've got a gauge on here to monitor any pressure loss, and then I've got a switch here to close the system off. That way I can see if it's holding pressure. So one thing we've got to do in order to properly test this is to turn the IPR valve all the way to 100%, or at least 84%, which is what its maximum is, so that it will close that valve and force all of the oil out. And to do that, we're going to use the scan tool. Bear with me here. We're going to go to active test. Injector control pressure regulator. Sorry. Okay. I don't need any PIDs on there. And I'm going to command this valve close. Right now we're at 14.84. Just going to increase this. Now you don't want to leave this too long because it can burn up the IPR valve, but we want this closed at least to above 84% before doing this test. And from here, we're just going to take shop air, plug into the, sorry, my connector has got a little issue here where I want to go in. Okay, so we're plugged in. And I'm just going to open this valve and let it push air out of this, or push the oil out of the system. And it'll take a minute to push everything out before we're going to start hearing a leak, but shortly after, there we go. I believe we've got a leak on the passenger side. You see the steam coming out, and then you can cover and if we close off air, we're losing pressure significantly. This is a fairly large leak. And we're almost down to 0. So next course of action, I'm going to take this valve cover off, look at the standpipe, look at the injector D-rings, and then probably put more air in the system whenever the valve cover's off so that I can see what's going on under that. And then we will move on from there and replace what's need to be replaced. We've got the valve cover off on the 6.0 Powerstroke to diagnose the high pressure leak. Got my air hose hooked up to the ICP sensor location, and I'm going to pump in about 120 psi shop pressure and just look around and see where this leak is coming from. So here it goes. I'm gonna open up the valve and dig in around here and see if we can find where this leak is at. The leak is definitely coming from back in this area. Doesn't feel like it's coming from the lower. I'm gonna go ahead and say it is a standpipe. Most likely the standpipe O-ring in the center between the two halves. So next thing is I'm going to pull this oil reel and pull the standpipe and take a look and see what we've got. Stay tuned.